the executive director of the Virginia Green Travel Alliance. There's our little logo with our partner logo. Of course, we've been working with the tourism industry for many years now, since 2008. We've certified over 1,900 businesses and festivals and events and hotels and attractions and convention centers and museums and breweries and wineries and all kinds of fun businesses and operations in the hospitality industry. We get a lot of satisfaction out of working with our operators. They all very well-meaning folks who are trying to do good things. They sign on to our program. They're making commitments to reduce their environmental impacts overall, energy, water use, sustainable products and practices, but certainly recycling and waste reduction is a major part of that. And in fact, it's an absolute to be certified as a Virginia Green Travel Partner is that you have to have a recycling program in place, and you have to tell us about what you're doing. However, and that sounds very straightforward and wonderful, and we definitely want all of our partners to be actively recycling and recycling right. I mean, we really encourage them to recycle right, develop signs and labels and things, and work with good vendors that are helping them, pick up the recyclables. Many of them have some challenges though, because they're in rural areas and they might have to go to drop-offs and things like that. But there are various techniques for encouraging them to co-locate their containers side by side with trash. We're encouraging them to keep plastic bags and things and other contaminants out of the recycling. But we're just also hearing that our partners are, so much has changed in the recycling industry over the years, but pretty recently and that's kind of what we're going to focus on now. We have a lot of our folks who let us know that the recycling has been discontinued in their area, or else they're confused about what is and what isn't recyclable, and they're just they're beating their heads up against the wall about how to implement a recycling program that really works for them. So our partners really do want to recycle right, but they're just having some challenges, and so that's why we're here today, and that's why I said, well, let's bring in the experts to talk about this. So I'm really excited about our panel today. It's a great cross-section of recycling experts, starting with Kim Hines of the Central Virginia Waste Management Authority. So that's a regional authority tasked with providing for recycling for the public and the various localities in the Richmond region. It's a huge region of, what is it? It's something like 20 different localities, Kim?
13, close enough.
Yeah. And next we have Teresa Sweeney. She is the recycling waste manager at Virginia Tech, and formerly was in charge of recycling and waste functions with Montgomery County, and has always been and still is very active with the Virginia Recycling Association. So we're going to hear more about what's happening on those levels. And finally, we have Kathy Russell with TFC Recycling. And TFC Recycling is one of the major recycling companies, the service providers that are coming to get recyclables and things, servicing your recycling dumpsters and things, taking it back to their facility, and taking those recyclables, sorting them out, and sending them off to become reused again as new materials. So I think we've got a great cross section of folks. So here's our plan today. We're going to hear from each one of our panelists. Briefly, they're going to tell you about who they are, how great their recycling programs are, a brief overview of some of the issues and things that they're seeing, and then we're going to go straight into Q&A. And I'm going to have some questions. At that point, I'll reiterate this a little bit, but we're going to do Q&A with each one of them. Going to ask our panelists to provide input, and then we're going to open it up to everybody that's on. We're going to try and make sure we have plenty of time at the end. So if you have your questions, keep them coming through the chat line, and even we're going to interject some of those while we're asking questions to the panelists as well, and we'll follow up with more at the end. So that's our plan. So I think we're just kind of going to go, as I said, left to right. We'll start with Kim to talk about the Central Virginia Waste Management Authority. Over to you, Kim.
Okay, thank you, Tom. You hear me all right?
Yep.
Well, thank you for having me today. I am Kim Hines. I'm Executive Director for Central Virginia Waste Management Authority. I've been the Executive Director for about 16 years now and have been with the authority for 27 years. So they say nobody stays in one job more than 7 years. Anomaly, I guess. So just a little bit about CVWMA and what we do. We are a public service authority that was formed under the Virginia Water and Waste Authorities Act. So we're a government agency that serves and works on behalf of 13 localities. So we were formed more than 30 years ago, and really what spurred our formation was in the late 80s when the state began mandating that localities plan for where their solid waste was going to go, and that they achieve a 25% recycling rate of the waste that's generated within their boundaries. So that was kind of how we came about. At the time, there was very little recycling infrastructure in place in our region, and so to meet the state's goals and mandates, the 13 localities kind of came together to do that collectively, achieve an economies of scale, that sort of thing. So next. As I mentioned, we serve 13 localities in the Greater Richmond and Tri-Cities area. Our service area is very diverse, ranging from urban, suburban, and rural communities, each that have different challenges and different goals, especially when it comes to recycling and what what their needs are. The population of our area is about 1.2 million, and we span 2,500 square miles. So we're governed by a board of directors that are representatives or appointed by the governing bodies of our locality, and we're completely local government funded. Next. So on a daily basis, we are providing programs to our 13 localities to, not just to meet the goals of the state, but to also be good stewards of our environment and give the public what they want as well. So CVWMA itself we don't do any of the operations ourselves. We don't own a recycling facility. We don't own trucks. We don't own a landfill or anything like that. So we are contracting everything out to the private sector. The TFC is provides us our largest program, and I know you're going to hear from Kathy in a little bit about more info about their process and the recyclables. But we do more than just the traditional household items like paper, cardboard, cans and bottles. We also provide electronics recycling of other things like tires, propane tanks, scrap metal, paint, and other household hazardous waste. Next. I mentioned our two largest programs, and I think is the items collected here are what we want to talk about today. We collect in our curbside and drop off your regular household items: paper, cardboard, aluminum, glass, plastic, bottles, jars, and containers. We serve we have a curbside recycling and residential program in 9 of our jurisdictions, and we also collect those same materials at 35 drop-off sites around the region. So we're collecting a lot of that material. And then the next slide just kind of shows you a little bit of how it gets sorted that Kathy's going to talk a little bit about later. That's just a little bit about us.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. And next we'll hear from Teresa.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to preface this by saying that I have been at Virginia Tech since May. Prior to that, I was at Montgomery Regional Solid Waste Authority and had been there for 23 years. And because of COVID and some of the program cutbacks that they made, my job was eliminated. So I have been fortunate enough to work with Virginia Tech, whom I had worked with previously in my role as education and outreach coordinator with the Solid Waste Authority. So I was very familiar with the programs at Virginia Tech when I took this role. I think that some of the challenges, we'll get into some of the questions a little bit later, but some of the challenges that we face are not anything that you all are not facing around the state. I think there are things that I have learned by being on this side of things, that I better understand collections and the way the daily operations run, and that some things just happen, and that's why it ends up at the Solid Waste Authority or the MRF, the way it ends up. But we use Recycling and Disposal Solutions, RDS, for processing all of our materials. We have a good relationship with Montgomery Regional Solid Waste Authority and RDS, and are constantly looking at ways that we can improve the way we collect, contamination percentages and things like that. We just recently revised our climate action commitment, and part of that has to do with waste and recycling, obviously. We want to be a zero waste campus by 2030. And so there are many, many things that need to happen, but with what we're doing, and you can change to the next slide. Some of the things that we are looking at to become a zero waste campus is to increase landfill waste diversion by 85 or to 85% by 2025. We're almost at 2025, so we have a lot of work to do before we can reach that goal. Increase waste recycling rate to 55% by 2025, and then reduce waste to the landfill per capita by 25% by 2025. But being a zero waste campus by 2030 is going to require that we do a lot more composting. And and you could change the slide, I think. The next one will talk a little bit about this. Some of the potential pathways that we are taking to get to that zero waste designation. We have hired a zero waste consultant, and they are here this week. They came in on Tuesday. They're still here today. They'll leave out tomorrow. Reduction in Motion is the name of the consulting group, and they are looking for this step in the process. They are looking at all of our operations. So they're looking at from the time waste is created to what students are doing with that, what faculty's doing with that, the staff, do we have adequate containers for them placing their waste in a container? Is the labeling concise and clear? What happens to it there? Is it housekeeping that picks it up? Is it the waste and recycling staff? Is it a contracted person that's picking it up? So they're looking at every step of the way to see if there are things that we're missing. Is there any miscommunication going on there? Are we ending up with a lot more trash than we're ending up with recycling? And just sitting in on the meetings with all of the stakeholders this week, I have learned so much about the operation, not just on the waste and recycling side of things, but from dining services, student affairs, all of the things that happen on a campus. We're not necessarily entwined with those on a day-to-day basis. So learning what they are dealing with on their end of things, and trying to understand and see what we can do to be that resource on campus, and really that person that can educate them on how we can better capture that waste and purchase things like Kathy was saying. Look at purchasing what you're purchasing and whether it can be recycled or not on the front end of things, the pre-cycling that goes on. One of the things that happened last year was that the executive order that was passed down, EO 77, from Governor Northam, we were in a panic because we had already eliminated styrofoam. We were trying to figure out how are we going to eliminate all these plastics. We have, you know, COVID going on and nobody wants to eat in the dining facilities. We're having takeout everywhere. You know, how are we going to get all of this stuff converted and not use single-use plastics? So we started working on that, and obviously it was rescinded. So we didn't have to go quite as far as what we thought we were going to have to go, but it was good for us to have that goal in mind because we want to be zero waste. So it helped us to look within our programs to see, you know, what do we have that is that single-use plastic that we cannot recycle, that it will not compost. All of our dining facilities now are using compostable takeout containers, utensils, all of it. Every single bit of that is compostable. And I was told this morning that the biggest part of the business that they have in the dining facilities is, you know, takeout, Grubhub. They're picking things up. And even if they are going to eat in the dining facility, they are ordering a takeout item and then just picking it up and sitting at the table. But the majority of those people are taking everything away from the dining facilities and taking it back to a dorm, to a classroom, an outside area where they can have their meal. And therefore, these containers inside the dining facilities are not, you know, used as frequently as some of the ones on the outside of these buildings. So we've got to look at how can we make those more useful, labeling a little more clear on those containers that are for recycling and waste. And are we going to have composting in other areas besides in the dining facility? So those are some things that we're working on and kind of looking at. I'll get into some more of that when we get a little bit further along, but that's a little bit about Virginia Tech and what we're doing.
Thanks, Teresa. And so next up, let's hear about TFC. Kathy.
So I have been at TFC for 18 years. I'm educational outreach coordinator. Our mission is very simple. We're trying to make it back to basics, paper bottles and cans. People still to this day, after recycling has been going on forever and ever and ever, is they try to overthink recycling. And I believe that they don't, and as Teresa mentioned, we had talked earlier before everybody went on about pre-cycling, is people are not getting back to basics and thinking about what they're purchasing. So TFC, being an old company, we've been in business since 1973 in the Chesapeake area, expanded to Newport News and to the Richmond market. We do have 3 facilities, but where we process. And if anybody wants to take a tour and is in that area, please get in touch with us. My information is right there. But we try to make it very basic. So people, I think one of the biggest disadvantages that happened maybe in the 70s was the triangle or the chasing arrows that happened. I think I see nodding heads. But because everybody thinks that if it has a triangle on it, it's recyclable. That is not the case. Most plastics should have a triangle on it and says what can be recycled as far as numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But there's got to be a market for what we recycle. So is there a market for water and soda bottles? We know yes, there is. Is there a market for detergent bottles or natural milk jugs or so forth? Yes, there is. But then we kind of get into the weeds after that. Is there a market for yogurt containers and butter tubs? The majority of 1s and 2s you see a lot more of than you do yogurt containers and butter tubs. So yes, we have a market, but it's a narrower market. So people think that if it's a toy and it's plastic, it can be put in the recycling bin, and we see it all the time. And that's not recyclable. We take number 1 through 7 bottles and mostly bottles and containers. So aluminum cans and metal cans, very easy to recycle. Cardboard, as long as it's clean, or paper, that as long as it's very clean, it's very recyclable. And then we do have markets for glass, and we do have sometimes glass gets to be a stickler. I mean, it gets to be hard to find homes for. But if it's not recycled and we don't have, if there's too much glass, some of it goes for alternative daily cover at our landfill. As I said, we have 3 locations. Our company is very old. It started in the late 1800s with the Benedetto family starting to recycle in America back in the 1800s. And then Joe Benedetto started the company in this area in 72. So again, we have very good relationships with companies that we can send to market. We are trying to make it paper bottles and cans. If you can remember that, it's very simple. It doesn't get in the weeds. Paper bottles and cans, recycle those. We are really, a big program that we're having is stop the tanglers. So, and it's one of the biggest things that we have problems with. Any kind of tanglers, plastic bags, I wish we would just get away with those. Just, they need to go bye-bye. But our machinery, and our machinery goes round and round and round as it goes up the conveyor system. And tanglers are one of the biggest problems that we have. And plastic bags are probably the biggest contributor to those. We want people to go zero waste as much as they can, but we understand that people put a lot of food waste on their paper. And so please, if you're recycling any kind of paper or a pizza box or any kind of paper gets put on anything, please don't put it in the recycling bin. It's been one mission that we've been trying to make sure that people understand. But again, it's paper bottles and cans. The form that you see or the slide that you see shows exactly what we recycle. I get the question caps on, caps off all the time. The biggest thing with caps on is please make sure that everything is emptied, because when it goes through our machinery, they use photo identification, especially here in Chesapeake. And if that bottle is full, it goes into the residue pile because of the weight of it. Again, if it's we do take milk cartons and juice cartons. We are one of like 3 or 4 meals in the whole country that actually are plants in the whole country that actually takes that. We do take milk cartons, juice cartons, wine boxes, and so forth. Again, bottles need to be number 1 and number 2 plastic bottles, and we do take yogurt containers in our CVWMA market. Again, back to basics, pre-cycle, think about what you purchase, and then paper bottles, cans, and cartons. When in doubt, throw it out is what our owner says all the time. So be very specific to what we take and don't kind of overthink it. So.
Thank you, Kathy. Yes, and I mean, and that's one of the things that's a challenge for me, even because I hear from our partners all over the state. And one of the things I try to emphasize to them is that it's different wherever you are, because it really is a business model. TFC has been a great partner to us in this region and in Tidewater, but you hear it from Kathy there too. They have to focus on the items that are going to keep them in business. And therefore, keeping contamination out of the waste stream is so very important. And you heard a little bit about those areas of contamination. I'll just, without want to jump into questions, but I'll let you one thing that I'm doing with our partners. I mentioned plastic bags before. It's so hard to change behavior. And so, because it used to be everything was in a plastic bag. I mean, that's just the way we did things. We carried it around. We got it to the dumpster. The bag went in the dumpster. And so that you're hearing it from Kathy, it's a tangler. It's going to mess up the equipment, and it's not recyclable through that MRF, that materials recycling facility. So what about plastic bags, Kathy? Can those be recycled? Many of them have a number on it.
So we do not take them. We do not want them. We don't even want a trash bag. What I say in our area, and again, I'm sure we have people all over the state, but Food Lion partners with Trex, the composite decking board company. And so me personally, I don't take plastic bags, but I might have wrappings of paper towels or toilet paper or, any kind of film that I get, or even the bubble wrap. I take it back to Food Lion, who I've asked. They take it from the stores to their distribution center. It's then baled, and then it goes to market in Winchester, Virginia. Please, I mean, if you cannot take it, please don't, as far as plastic bags, but anything else, put it all together if you do, and take it back to Food Lion. Check with Walmart, Harris Teeter, some of those do the same. Not sure if they deal with Trex.
You know, and again, one point to be made there is that, you know, it does get confusing to folks because it'll say, you'll have the recycling symbol on it. And that usually means that, yes, they can be
So
recycled, but not necessarily through the mixed all in one. Even items like styrofoam, polystyrene can be recycled. And so sometimes you'll even see something there and people get confused about that. They can, if you were to take them all to some facility that doesn't exist in Virginia, where they were only taking styrofoam, it could be put back into styrofoam. And there are various programs through TerraCycle is a company that does some of this specialized stuff, but it's expensive. And so, you know, what we're mostly talking about is with our programs, trying to do something that's going to be affordable, hopefully not more expensive than sending it to the landfill, because, you know, at least with all the work that TFC and other recyclers do, you know, that we don't have to pay to take it to the landfill, the materials themselves. And hopefully there's a market that helps support recycling overall. All right.
One of Kathy's comments on the triangle, that has been a real source of confusion with the public. And you were talking about those bags. Some of them actually have the recycling Mobius emblem on them, but most plastics have just a triangle, which is a plastic coating system that, like Kathy said, it has 1 through 7 numbers through that. And that tells somebody what type of plastic it is. But people look at that, and because it's plastic, they automatically throw that in the recycling bin. And so we have worked on letting our legislators know that there are some issues with that, because if we don't change it from the front end, we're going to keep having this confusion. So there needs to be something done on the manufacturing packaging side of things to help this along. So that's something that we have worked on a good bit to try to educate people that those are not the same type of emblems. And same with the lids on, lids off. We approached the American Plastics Council to find out, do you want us, we need a consistent message. We can't just say, you know, do it this time, but don't do it that time. We need it to be a consistent message. They either say leave them on or leave them off. And they have said you can leave the lids on your bottles. Again, they really do need to be emptied. So, you know, free from liquids or any type of food waste.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I love what Kathy said. We try and keep it simple. Focus on the stuff that we know.
Yes.
And then, you know, if you have questions about something, so like for instance, Kathy, I've got this hard plastic storage bin. You know, it's made of plastic. Can't I just put that in my recycling bin too?
No, thank you. Don't do that. Again, we take mostly bottles, you know, detergent bottles, shampoo bottles, milk jugs, water and soda bottles. Basically, they're the ones that the market wants. A rigid plastic, we do not take. Our machinery, it would destroy it before it got out of there. And again, our machinery in Chesapeake, Chester's a little bit different, does photo identification. So it's looking for the image of a bottle. And again, needs to be clean and emptied.
Tom, I'm going to hop in here a second. We do have a couple of questions that I want to let the panel talk about at this point. First off, again, recycling is different all across the state. So we do have a couple of questions. One about, are cartons accepted? We thought that they weren't. Another question that says, our service provider wants recycling in clear blue bags. I'm assuming that you guard those. So again, I do want to remind everyone on the call, though, that recycling is different depending on which part of the state you're in. I know, for example, obviously we've got TFC here, we've got CVWMA, and we've talked about glass. Glass is not collected in a commingled stream in Northern Virginia. So first point being, please make sure that you are looking at what your service provider does and doesn't accept. They are the first source of information, because again, TFC, CVWMA, we're talking about, you know, specific parts of the state. And so for those of you that aren't in these specific parts of the state, I don't want to create too much confusion. But, you know, there was also a question as far as what recommendations do today's presenters have for localities in Virginia that are considering adopting the newly allowed fee for single-use plastic bags?
There's a lot in there, Morgan. So I would say, I'll just pick off the one little piece about the blue bags. I actually do business a lot in the Northern Virginia area. I do auditing as well. And there are lots of specialized companies that actually don't want lots of bags, but they want a central bag simply because of the logistics of tossing it somewhere, and they can toss it into a smaller vehicle, and they then empty those before they recycle those. Georgetown Paper is one of those that specializes in that. That's how they want their materials. So you're going to have a lot of different companies doing things different ways, but none of them are recycling dirty plastic bags for sure. If it's coming in that plastic bag is just being emptied and going to trash.
The other thing, I just wanted to comment too, that there are bags that are being sold in the stores, even in our area, that say to use them for recycling. So that's just another challenge that, like, we know they're used in other programs, or other companies are using the blue bags. But, that's just another thing that adds to the confusion of, we don't want plastic bags. We don't want the dirty plastic bags, and we don't want you to bag your recyclables. So I just will echo all the comments about finding out more about what is recyclable and where in your area is really key and important to reducing contamination, which ultimately keeps costs low.
And going back to Kathy's point a while ago, those bags wrap themselves around the mechanical parts of those conveyor belts, and can tear the belt up, or not the belt itself, but the star things that are separating the different kinds of plastic. But if you think of a bag having recyclables in that bag, it is so large because of all the things in it, it doesn't recognize, and it can't sort the materials the way the machine was designed to sort it. So, we've come a long way with technology, but if we're not going to recycle the right way, these machines can't sort it into different types of materials that can be marketed to, these people that are wanting to use recycled content in their products.
I have a couple of comments, though. A lot of those plastic bags are coming from third-party companies that say they're recycling, but they send it to companies like us, which even makes it worse. So they'll pick up the material curbside. They're usually a little teeny small company, and then they bring it to a processing material or a MRF who actually then sorts it. We do not want it. And the other thing is just remember, for every tangler you put in the recycling bin, there's somebody that's going to have to actually dig that stuff out. Mm-hmm. Not only does it mess up our machinery, but when our machinery is down after lockout, tag out, they have a shift of nothing but cleaning those stars out. So they're literally getting the material and actually cutting it out, which is something we don't want to spend our time doing. We want to be sorting recycling. So.
Again, Morgan, there was a lot there. If we didn't touch on something specific, please come back to that. But I just did kind of want to take what Kathy said and take that to another question to Kim, which is that I think has some implications there. It might be kind of a softball for you, Kim, but what we're hearing is that some municipalities, even some in your jurisdiction, but some others, down in the coastal regions as well, some of them are canceling their recycling pickup services. Can you tell us maybe a little insight there, and what can we do as citizens and businesses to help preserve those programs?
Sure. Well, every locality is certainly challenged with balancing the budget, balancing the economics of all the services that they provide, from public safety to schools to recycling. So I will say that every locality has their own priorities and what takes priority, and again, balancing that funding. So in our area, we do have the benefit of a couple of MRFs, TFC, and there's also another a little bit smaller MRF in our area, and several waste haulers. So from the perspective of Chesterfield County, they felt like that this was a time that where the public or the private sector is poised to take that over, but I will say that, you know, government involvement is important in recycling. We have spent more than 30 years educating people on why it's important to separate out your recyclables, and we've spent that time making it easy. And although it's created challenges from a sorting and what's accepted, we have spent, you know, 30 years trying to make it easy so that people would do it and see the value in it. There is value in recycling and keeping it out of the landfills. It costs more to throw it away, although that's not always immediately seen by local governments when they're putting their budgets together. So, but I would just continue, you know, reaching out to your local leaders, having that government involvement to ensure that recycling continues to happen is going to be key. Economic development to ensure there's bringing companies to Virginia that can use our feedstock and or use our recyclable materials as feedstock in their manufacturing operations is key to closing that loop, in addition to buying, you know, paying attention to what you're buying at the store. So, and I guess what communities can do to kind of help preserve the recycling programs is keep talking to your local leaders about the importance of recycling, about what your goals are as a company, whether you're local, statewide, nationwide organization, you know, keep honing in on those, that importance of recycling. So we don't want people to get out of the habit of recycling. So we spend a lot of time educating and trying to get people to do it and seeing the value in it, and we don't want to break those habits. So again, keep talking to your local and state leaders and about the importance of recycling. So we want the private sector to stay here as well, that are recycling companies like TFC and others.
Well, that said, and of course, I mean, that I completely agree with you that, like, yes, the markets, we know the markets are down. It makes it tougher for the recycling companies to really expand what they're doing as well. So, you know, I hope as governments and hope as communities, we can keep pushing. That said, I'm going to have a question that I'll direct at Teresa, but I know you all are all involved in the Virginia Recycling Association. What is the Virginia Recycling Association doing to strengthen recycling efforts overall statewide?
Well, you've touched on some of that already. Some of the people speaking, Kathy and Kim, have both touched on some of that. So the Virginia Recycling Association has looked at regulatory review, you know, some of the things that, some of the regulations around recycling have not been updated since the 80s. So we've worked with legislative folks to make sure that they realize that some of this needs to be updated. Back then, recycling was something that we did that made us feel good about what we were doing. It was an environmental thing that made us, you know, happy to take part in. But as we have developed markets, it's more than just a great environmental act that we do. It has become a business that manufacturers rely on that feedstock, and so we're producing a product for them. So we have to look at things a little bit differently. In those regs, there's no mention of curbside, single stream recycling. So there's things that really need to be updated so that we can all try to provide some consistency. One of the chats, the question was about the different things around the state. If we had some unity about what we took, like bottles, cans, paper, we said this at the last VRA conference, we've got to simplify this message and get back to basics, because so many localities have started taking some things that are not the norm, or, you know, they're trying to take everything and then sort out the contaminants that they can't market. So it's nice to know that most every locality will take bottles, cans, and paper. So we've looked at some of the regulatory things. We've also looked at communication, and the VRA is working to try to provide a newsletter each month to members, talking about the different things going on in the state, if there are new businesses that are starting up, which localities, have materials that they need to get rid of, new manufacturers that are looking for a certain item. So we've looked at some of the communication and how to make some of that communication a little more clear and concise. And then also some opportunities to work with local governments, to work with our legislative representatives. It may surprise a lot of people to know that most of our legislators know absolutely nothing about waste and recycling. And when I have spoken with some of our delegates and senators, they have just been amazed that recycling is so big, and all the things involved with recycling. They just don't have a clue, how enormous it is as far as, the business aspect of it. So I think we have made some headway there, but we have to keep plugging along, and COVID did not help that. So, we've got to get back in there and start working a little bit more on making some of those changes.
Again, this is kind of open for everyone. And if you have other insight about, the VRA and its work to hopefully push those initiatives forward. But what about brass tacks of like the future? In the short run, are you hearing that there are a number of new materials recovery facilities, recycling facilities being built? Are there a number of, you mentioned some new businesses coming through, but the markets themselves, are you seeing, or is there a plan to help develop markets for the companies that want the materials? Perhaps it's some of these other, I appreciate the focusing on the core areas, but maybe, the expectations of recycling the other numbered plastics and other types of recyclables. Are you seeing more of a push for companies to develop those markets?
I think that one of the things too, the focus has always been on recycling, but there's always been some other things in there. You've got people that do litter prevention, you have people that do recycling, waste management, which is more with trash pickup and collection, and then composting. We've tried to spend the last couple of years just focusing on recycling, or maybe last 5 to 6 years on recycling, and trying to figure out what it is that we can devote our time to increase recycling rates, to make sure that the markets are stable by providing good materials. But that has to happen with a lot of what I was talking about, opportunities, not just opportunities with state government partners, but also the Virginia Manufacturing Association. We need to know what they need. What is it about our materials that make it more acceptable or more unacceptable? And how can we clean that product up so that we know that, if we have this many tons of PET, we can get rid of that, because you're going to buy whatever we have as long as we have low contamination rates. So we really need to work more with those manufacturers to help develop, those markets and keep them strong. That was one of the things with the PET plastic. We've had a strong market for that, and we've worked on that for a number of years. And to eliminate single-use plastics, you could still take the 2-liter bottles, but not the 12 or 16 ounce bottles, I think it was. So a little bit of a disconnect there. If we can recycle the 2-liter, why can't we recycle why can't we buy the 12% or 16%? But there's a lot of things that play into that. And, if you're really into waste reduction, you want that to be eliminated altogether. As recyclers, we have to look at, there are a certain number of things that are going to be purchased, and we want to make sure that when they're purchased, we've got a market to recycle those.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Kathy, are you all planning a new facility? Or are you hearing about markets expanding in that regard to handle
One market we're really excited about is in Chesapeake, is they're going to be starting a pulp mill where they're taking cardboard or paper and actually pulping it, because there are not enough recycling facilities or processing facilities for paper throughout the United States. This is going to eliminate, because we don't have enough mills, they're going to pulp it, and when it goes overseas, it'll be already pulped. So that's going to really help a lot. You know, we export here in Chesapeake. We may not export as much, and again, it's only paper and cardboard, as much in Chester because of the distance. But now the material can go to Chesapeake, to the pulp mill, it'll get pulped, and then it'll go to markets as a pulp state. So that's going to actually be good for us. As far as more paper mills, we're not hearing about it anymore. And again, you know, we need more paper mills to accommodate all the paper. But then on the backside, if you think about it, is we have so much stuff. I mean, you think of all the Amazons in the world and all the boxes that we get and how much paper we get and cardboard from those boxes. And there's a big demand, and cardboard has gone up big time. Of course, newsprint has gone down because nobody's using newspapers. So it's kind of subsidizing each other a little. But a lot of our paper and cardboard actually goes overseas here from the coastal area.
Morgan, I'll circle back to you. Just want to make sure we touch on any of the concerns or questions people have about specific materials or larger issues about the industry.
Yes,
Other
we have a
questions for us?
lot of questions that have come in.
Good.
A lot of questions. So first, a two-part question about Virginia Tech. What was the name of the consultant that Virginia Tech is using? And what tips do you have to prevent contamination of compostables with trash? How do you make sure that people are putting composting in the trash, et cetera?
We are using reduction in motion, and the composting that we are doing here on campus currently is on the pre-consumer side of things. So we have a couple of facilities on campus that are doing most of the meal prep. So it's, you know, cutting up the vegetables and, you know, they make the pre-packaged salads and things like that. So we're getting the, you know, the pre-consumer items, which are easier to control. And also in some of the dining facilities, we have on the back side of things, we have certain people that are designated to, they scrape the plates, so they are able to control what's going in the bin and what's not. I personally witnessed yesterday 25 or 30 carts, toters that were emptied full of compost, and I did not see any contamination whatsoever in any of it. So I was very, very impressed with what our dining services teams are doing in each area. But if we have students do that, it is going to be a lot of education moving forward. And if that's what our consultants think is really going to help us make that number, we're going to have to really do a lot of that. I think with what we were talking about, increasing composting, we have a lot of animal waste. And so we want to build our own compost facility. We're transporting our compost 70 miles down the road to be composted. So we really need to do something a little closer to home, and having our own facility here, we can use it as a learning lab for students. We might even have some student interns and things like that that could be learning about composting and helping us produce a product at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. The pre-consumer stuff, you know, the prep waste and all those types of things, and even the stuff where you're using real dishes. But again, the key is to get rid of the little things that contaminate it. The plastic forks and the plastic forks that come in the plastic container, and the little packages of condiments. I hate little condiment packages because I've worked many festivals and events where we're trying to compost on the post-consumer side. And on the post-consumer side, it's still a battle, but it's all about science. You got to at least give people the ability to see what's happening, and then you got to limit the number of possible contaminants that can get in there. And then you have to check it again as well. But we did have one little video that Kim had also on signs and things and how to get messages across. Do we still have that available, Megan? Here we go.
Okay, well, I was just gonna,
It should be showing now.
It is showing, but did the little video piece start or? There,
can't hear it.
it looks like we don't have the sound. Oh. Hello. Well, yeah, I'll let you comment on that, but I just love the simplicity of that, the pictures.
Yeah, I think the question has come up about, what is the most effective way to communicate with people, to hear your message. And, we try to run the gamut on reaching people from, signage to our website to social media, all those things. And, we know that people have like one split second to hear what you have to say, and then that's about it. So trying to get our message across quickly and easily is a little bit of a challenge, but we've decided that the more concise, the less words, the more visual you are, the better, the more catchy and fun also helps. We're starting to dabble into TikTok, which is a little bit beyond my comprehension, but just in how do we capture all audiences to hear that same message. So we're just trying different things. We found that these short, 5-10 second videos are can be effective too, just focusing on one piece of it and not everything, because I think people lose interest when you go on and on and on about this or that. And
I think that song should be tied in with every little piece of communication.
yeah.
And in the Hampton Roads area, in the Hampton Roads area, there's a new campaign too. I said in the Hampton Roads area, there's a new campaign called Start Smart, Recycle Right through Ask HR Green. Please go to their website. It has a lot of good information about, what can be recycled, and a lot of video as far as television. It's going to be some billboards. It's going to be radio, and it's a big campaign. And it's, I'm sure it would be awesome to be able to share some of that information. But it's Start Smart, Recycle Right.
And Kathy, did you have another video that you wanted to show? Was that?
No, but just go to Start Smart, Recycle Right.
Right. Yep.
So Tom, we do have, we do have quite a few questions about what is contamination. So I'm not gonna overload you, but I'm gonna mention a couple of things. So first is, how clean do the recycled containers need to be? And then somebody also mentioned, when it comes to contamination, we've heard conflicting things about beer cans, with the pressure sensitive shrink wrap labels. Are those tanglers? Are paper towels considered paper? Are those recycled? So there's still, again, with recycling, some of that confusion about the specifics.
So paper towels are not recyclable. It's probably been recycled about 7 times, and it has no fiber in it, plus of the residue from the germs. We don't want it. What was the other one? It was regarding the beer.
The beer cans with the pressure sensitive shrink wrap labels.
Are you talking about glass beer bottles?
I can explain this a little bit. Many of our breweries, we have a project we're working on with breweries right now. They're concerned about the fact that when they have their own labeling systems, especially smaller breweries. So they're not sprayed on cans. They're not, they're not fully printed. So it's like a wrap. So it's almost like a plastic label that goes on some of these specialized brewery cans. Yeah.
Like it is on a water bottle. It would be no different. So you do not have to take those off.
Well, they're completely adhering
Those
to
are paper.
It looks just like it's been screen printed or what have you, but there is a plastic component. And so our breweries are concerned about whether or not that's showing up as a contaminant issue on your end. And, it's evidently not something you're aware of at this point.
No, it's not at all. I mean, is it on glass?
No, just only on the cans. It's like a
And it's
label.
aluminum cans. Aluminum cans?
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably would take that off. Is it something you can take off?
You can't. This is how it shows up in the supermarket now. What it is like they can screen print them in batches of, like, I know, and the brewery people online are probably going to, say I'm getting this all wrong, of 100,000. But
Right.
if you're doing batches of that specialty beer that, you are only doing in batches of 10,000 or, right now, then it's exponentially more expensive to do even though it's cheaper overall to do the 100,000, but if you're not to 100,000, then it's much more expensive. At 10,000, it costs way more to screen print.
You should probably check with your local MRF on anything that you have questions about like that, because, TFC may say, no, we don't want it, but they may
Right.
sell to a certain company that does not want to have to, when melting that down, does not want any plastic residue in the melted aluminum, because they are going to melt that down and they're going to flatten it out and make sheets of it. But then again, somebody else may say, that it's perfectly fine because that material is just going to burn off and we can clean the metal up before it's rolled out. So, I would check with your local MRF on anything like that, because we take pizza boxes. Our MRF takes pizza boxes, always have. And when they send that to a cardboard facility, there's absolutely no problem with that whatsoever, as long as it's empty.
I think part of it is because you have a threshold of contamination. As long as that threshold is not too high, you're okay. But when everybody, keeps doing the greasy and the oily and the polys on it, that's when the contamination problem comes. I have not heard a word from our people saying they've had an issue with it.
Yeah. So to just summarize that, basically, it's our breweries that are worried about it because they're trying to be as sustainable as possible. So if that contamination factor, you probably got more other different types of contamination, making your aluminum more contaminated than that, especially when it's such a small percentage of the cans.
Right.
Correct.
What else you got, Morgan?
All right, so we are at 2:01, but I have tons of questions that people are
If it's
asking.
okay, I mean, that we go another 10 minutes or so.
I have another meeting, but I will answer anything I can.
Okay. Great. Go until you have to fade out, Teresa. Thank you.
And I'm trying to combine a couple questions at once sometimes. So a couple people are asking just to speak to the reduction of plastics on the production side. With the limited market for recyclables, it seems that there's a disconnect between public perception of purchasing plastic, thinking that they can recycle anything, but then other people that, don't actually believe their recyclables are getting recycled.
Well, I've been here for 18 years and I can promise you that recycling does happen. Now, what happens here is, if say house 1, 2, and 3 had all contamination and then the whole truck is filled up, we don't segregate the whole load being contaminated. So we separate the contamination from the processable material, and then it is separated, baled, and goes to market. So it actually does happen. And for those naysayers, please ask them if they want to come take a tour of our facility. We offer that. We're an open book. We can show you how it happens.
Kathy, what would you say about the idea that, you're getting materials from other places, and so hauler A is picking up a dumpster and they are then letting our partners know that it was contaminated, and then potentially either not taking it to you or else taking it to you, and with the idea, are you all charging people, those other haulers, if they're showing up with contaminants?
There is a processing rate per ton. So that has changed in the years that I've been here. Right now, the markets are not, the markets are strong, the prices are low. It's like the stock market. If the stock market's up, usually commodities market is up. The stock market is low now, commodity marketing is low. But we do process it. If it is contaminated, we still process it. Again, processing fees do occur in 2022.
Yeah. All right. We could talk on and on about that one, Morgan. Is there another piece of that to touch on that we missed?
I'm trying to, there's a lot of questions about Virginia Tech going zero waste, but I'm trying to focus, a lot on recycling related questions. We do have a question about somebody that's not sure what the difference is between mechanical recycling and chemical recycling. And is there a prioritization process between these two for Virginia Tech's zero waste plan?
Right now, we, as I mentioned earlier, we use RDS for all of our recycling needs. And we have an agreement with the Montgomery Regional Solid Waste Authority. All of our material has to go to that facility. So as long as they are contracted with RDS, all of our material will go there regardless. We are only collecting 1 and 2 plastics, and I think where some of the chemical recycling comes into play is with some of the harder to recycle plastics like the 3 through 7s. We had a lot of the public very upset because we eliminated the 3 through 7s in our collection program. And I think that some of the chemical recycling will allow some of that material to be recycled, but that won't happen for us as long as we are focusing on taking our things to Montgomery Regional, and RDS is their MRF that they send everything to. But the difference in that is that you have the residue from the chemical process that you have to deal with. So I'm not so familiar with that because it is very new to recyclers. So I do know there have been some facilities that have shown interest in coming to Virginia. But we're asking for people to recycle 3 through 7. So if the process is a chemical one, then that's, you have to weigh out what's better, to recycle the 3 through 7s or to have the residue from the chemical process in making that a reusable product at some point to market to the manufacturing world.
That's incredibly interesting there with the different markets and technologies involved as well. I mean, on a simpler aspect, we've seen combinations of various recycling facilities, some known as dirty MRFs, which means that they will take all your trash and recycling, and then they're promising to sort it out. And of course, the downside there is if you put it all together, it's all going to get contaminated. And so, mixing it all in a great big bowl and trying to pull out the aluminum cans. So just be aware of what you're buying. It's great to ask those questions about whether it's chemical recycling, et cetera. The other one that's out there is like some folks are burning, trash and recyclables together even to create energy. And so there are definitely some downsides to that. Right. Definitely, focusing on actual recycling first. Potentially there are some benefits to burning residues as well for energy, but you need to know what you're buying there. Hey, I'm willing to certainly stay online, but I know lots of people are probably dropping off, and I know Teresa has to. Megan, could we jump to the last 2 slides just so we can kind of conclude for our next things coming up? First, it was just a quick advertisement to let you know you're going to start, if you're on our mailing list, you'll start hearing about our Virginia Green Travel Conference this year. We are partnering with Keep Virginia Beautiful to really focus on litter prevention and recycling this year for our conference in honor of their 70th anniversary. So we're really excited about that and really partnering with lots of the local clean city commissions and things that they are different affiliates of Keep America Beautiful. We even have one of our keynotes is the executive director for Keep America Beautiful will be with us. So please plan for that. Also, next slide simply is our next forum is planned for December 15th, and it's entitled there, How to Win a Virginia Green Travel Star Award. So our Travel Star Award applications will be coming out at the beginning of December. And so this is your, nuts and bolts on, what that's all about, and lots of opportunities. And you see the fun we have we make a great big deal about it at our annual conference and awards. That said, I just want to thank our panelists so much for being with us. If you can stick around, and Morgan, if you've got more questions from folks, keep them coming. I'll stick around for a while. But I just thank you everybody for being with us today. And that officially concludes it. But we'll stick around for a while and keep them coming if you will.
Please email me if you have any questions specifically for me.
Okay, will do, Teresa. Thank you.
It's recycle247@vt.edu.
All right, thank you so much, Teresa,
Thanks.
and Kim and Kathy. But maybe we'll stick around a little bit. Just a few more minutes. We have a few more questions there, Morgan.
I did put the link to the December forum in the chat if anyone wants to sign up for that easily.
Oh, great, thank you. I didn't know that was available yet.
We do have a question asking if all of the waste that TFC processes comes from within the state.
Oh, yeah. So the Chester location only does the Chester area, all of the CVWMA area. We do have some commercial accounts that is in the immediate area. And then here in Chesapeake, we process for just the main cities here around Chesapeake and the peninsula, meaning Williamsburg, James City County, and York County. We are not taken out of state. And then in the Chesapeake location, all of the residue right this moment, meaning what's not processable and not recyclable, actually goes to the waste to energy plant, which is going to close sometime next year.
All right, we have a question about that. It says that the Chesapeake has canceled curbside recycling, but has a pulp meal facility. Is that correct?
Has a what facility?
Pulp meal facility.
Hope Mill. Are they talking about the pulp? Oh, pulp mill facility. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So it's I'm not sure about the venture. It's completely separate from the city of Chesapeake. It's a private company. I'm not sure if it's a public company, but yes, they're going to be opening up a pulp facility. But yeah, they did stop curbside recycling. But there's a lot of momentum going on right now with the residents of Chesapeake, and we're hopeful that it will start back in a couple of years, if not next year. Of course, I'm sure it will have to go back out to bid, but we're hopeful.
Hey, Kathy, I just had another question about one specific thing, and that's simply glass. I mean, you mentioned about how sometimes it's used for road bed material or for landfill cover. Maybe just real quick, I mean, I know that in the Richmond area, you still have a market, although albeit slim, for actually recycling glass in the glass. Maybe you just comment on that for a second.
So all the glass goes to a facility in North Carolina where they separate it by size and by color. And there's been some upgrades to their facility, so they're taking more glass. So the Chester glass is actually a lot cleaner than, say, our Chesapeake glass because of the way the process works. Ours is very small here in Chesapeake, but in Chester, it's big enough that they use photo identification there too. I understand that it's similar to a machinery that separates rice. Like if they were to have a brown rice and white rice and so forth, then they can actually separate it. So it's optical scanners. It's done in North Carolina and it is recycled. So, and there is a market. In fact, I was at a plant tour yesterday and we have very little glass here because it's all gone to market.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear about that technology. Just want to pass that part on, that it can happen. It does happen in the Richmond, Chester area. So.
And just
some counties are opting out of glass. They're just opting out of it because of the weight and the processing fee.
Well, even in the interesting in the DC market, even though they've agreed that the municipalities do not have to recycle glass anymore, many of them still are, at least because they're getting so much of it from the DC market as well. Same companies that are working with that, going to the same facility. So. Any more questions, Morgan?
I was just going to note that the slide was wrong, but Megan made a quick change to it, that the next forum is actually at 2 o'clock. I think the slide had previously said 1 o'clock. But yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there. I think that is most of the questions. We do have a comment that Northern Virginia is recycling glass back into glass again, because once they removed it from the commingled stream, and the public started bringing it to the purple cans, they are getting extremely clean glass. And so they're really able to not have to use that for daily cover or anything and turn it right back into glass. So a success story there.
That's great, but yeah, I know they have those big drop-off bins up there now. Awesome. All right, well, we will conclude officially now, and we will be making this available. We recorded this, and so just sort of clean this up, take out all the mistakes I made along the way, and maybe it will make me look a little bit better. But we'll have this available for recording hopefully by next week. And anyhow, thanks again to Kathy and Kim and the DEQ staff, Morgan and Megan, for making all this happen behind the scenes. And I'm glad we got the time right. I didn't know it was 2 o'clock next time. But we will see you next time. Thanks so much. Keep the comments coming. Most of you should be able to, even through the original announcements and things for registration, my email and the DEQ Virginia Green emails are there as well. So keep the comments coming, and thanks so much for caring about this so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.